scholarship is amazing. We move to Swami Chidanandaji. I can see that you are already here. Namaste, Swamiji. How are you? I'd like to do a brief introduction and then you can start your lecture. And I hope you have unmuted yourself.
Just now, I did.
Just now. Okay, great. See, Swami Chidanandaji is a person whom I had the great fortune to know for a very long time. We were in the same hostel in IIT Madras long time ago. Even though we lost touch for a long time, I have been fortunate to be in touch with him for several years. He is a well-known speaker, writer, and he has been promoting spirituality and human values for over 3 decades. And he started fascination for Vedanta in 1980 while he was still studying his MTech in IIT. And he became a disciple, senior disciple of Swami Chinmayananda. He also drew inspiration from Sri Ramana Maharshi. And he was an ordained teacher for several years with Chinmaya Mission, sometime in the United States in San Jose. And he was a chief residential teacher, Acharya in Sandeepani. And then he was also inspired and he spent some time in Kerala also, right, Swamiji?
That's right.
In that, with the Chinmaya Viswavidyalaya, earlier version of it, if I remember.
It was called, right. That time it was called Chinmaya International Foundation.
Yeah, Chinmaya International. You were the head of the Chinmaya International Foundation.
Right.
And then he came in contact, I mean, he has been in contact with, but he got more influenced with Krishnamurti and he joined Varanasi chapter of Krishnamurti Foundation of India after he left Chinmaya Mission. And he served there in executive positions. And then he continues to be a trustee for the KFI. And he currently runs 4Y Forum, which is an NGO. And he speaks on spiritual topics to diverse audience. He and I had a good fortune to work with Tata Steel and give some talks in some corporate settings as well. And he presents webinars on alternative Sundays. And he comes and gives talks quite a bit in United States as well as in India with Ramana Maharshi's talks, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, and variety of classics. And he had the rare fortune and very big privilege of being invited by Vatican to represent Hinduism at the International Conference in Rome. And he lives in Solan in Himachal Pradesh, but he travels quite a bit. So with that, Swamiji, what we are doing is we will spend some time, you please give you the pravachan, especially whom are we addressing this question? Where is this ignorance coming from?
Right.
And then we can take some questions afterwards and we'll say what the agenda is for tomorrow and we'll end the session. So the floor is yours.
That's right. Yeah. Now I am audible to all participants. Is that
yes,
so?
You are.
Oh. Okay. Om Yairime Gurubhi Purvam Padavakya Pramanataha Vyakyata Sarva Vedanta Sanityam Pranatosmyaham. Dear friends, we have with us a very fascinating question. Who has avidya? To whom does ignorance belong? What ignorance are we talking about? In the Vedanta, in the entire literature, it is said because of ignorance, avidya, there is this perception of plurality. Ignorance is called the cause of our egoism. The separate self, meaning one looks at oneself as separate from others, is caused by ignorance. The word caused is used, but is it really a situation of causation? Avidya here as the cause and ahankara over here as the effect. We shall examine the matter and find that the truth is a little different. First of all, I would like to throw some light on what we call avidya. Avidya is a name given to erroneous perception. While the Upanishads and the wonderful Bhashyas, commentaries written by Adi Shankaracharya are the main foundation for Advaita Vedanta. To make matters even easier, different scholars have written some Prakarana Granthas also. A shloka from Atma Bodha has always been personally delightful to me. Atma Bodha, attributed to Adi Shankara, though with regard to these Prakarana Granthas, sometimes we do not know whether Adi Shankara himself wrote it or wrote them. Anyhow, this shloka is attractive because of a very appropriate metaphor. Metaphor for erroneous seeing. First I will tell you what it is, then recite the Sanskrit shloka. It says, on a night when there are clouds in the sky, one often imagines that the moon is moving. And upon proper examination, one finds out that the moon is not moving, it is the clouds that are moving. Likewise, all of us in error of perception, which Adi Shankara himself might call asamyak darshana. Samyak darshana is seeing rightly. Asamyak darshana, erroneous seeing. In erroneous seeing, all of us look at ourselves as an individual, Jivatma, and there are other Jivatmas, and the classic differentiation, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara comes into being. However, upon seeing rightly, there is no duality, there is no Dvaita, there is only Advaita. Nate Dvaitam na vidyate, says Mandukya Karika. The shloka of Atma Bodha goes like this. Vyaprateshvindriyeshvatma vyapari va vivekinam drishyate abhreshu dhavatsu dhavanniva yatha shashi. Shashi means the moon. Just as the moon seems to be running in the sky, while actually it is abhra, the clouds that are moving. Likewise, actually it is a matter of indriyas which are perceiving, feeling good at times, feeling bad at other times, and so on. Indriyas are vyaprata, but Atma seems to be vyaprata, means active, on the move, changing, rising, falling, and so on. The truth is, Atma, the pure self, the truth of our existence, is ever free. Nothing ever happens to it. So to see what is ever free as bound, as rising or falling, as suffering or enjoying, that is the error we are talking of, and that is avidya. Now we are talking on the platform of Advaita. Advaita means one without a second. Brahma alone is. Sarvam khalu idam Brahma. We have an Upanishadic statement. And Uddalaka in the Samavedas Chandogya emphatically says, Sat eva somya idam agra asit. Truth alone was, is, and will be, is the implication. Brahma alone is. Therefore, the question arises, how did Brahma, which is absolutely one, leaving no room for anything at all other than it, how did this Brahma become many? Now, the question needs to be questioned. The doubt needs to be doubted. When one asks, how did this happen? It is possible to ask back, has it really happened? And at the height of the Vedanta wisdom, there is this pointer. That pointer is present all along, but students catch up with it as they advance in their studies. There is this revelation, there is this pointer called Ajatavada. Nothing has happened at all. So, in other words, Brahma alone was, is, and will be. Brahma has not become many at all. But then students begin with this idea. Well, I am pure Brahman, but this ignorance is making me see duality. I become alpa, limited, because of ignorance. So, going by usual thinking as it applies to countless phenomena in this created universe, a student would imagine here that something has happened to him as though there is someone who was at one time without ignorance, and at some point of time, ignorance hit him or hit her. For simplicity, I'll use the masculine pronoun, hit him. Now the question arises, if you imagine like that someone is seized with, someone is hit by avidya, who is that someone? Can we say Brahman was hit by avidya, or Brahman came and enveloped avidya came and enveloped Brahman? That is ridiculous. Nothing can, first of all, attack Brahman, or, there is nothing other than Brahman. So, who has avidya? Brahman cannot have avidya. And if you say, no, that is where the individual soul has avidya. Is there an individual soul other than Brahman? Does individual soul exist independently? And the same question applies to anything else you say. Indriyas, the sense organs came under the influence of avidya. They host avidya. Today we talk about computers that host certain software. We talk about clouds. So, which is the cloud where avidya is hosted? So, that is the question we are examining. Here we want to clarify that there is a basic problem with this thinking itself. You imagine that avidya and the rest of it has actually happened. You imagine that avidya has certain status quo. It exists somewhere. Now this question comes to a Vedanta student as he gets down into the details. Perhaps it applies here also to say the devil is in the details. First everything looks so good. Then the devil is in the details. When you get into the details, you find, oh, this cannot happen at all. Therefore, it is that in the Bhagavad Gita Bhashya, chapter 13, commenting on verse number 2, Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata, there is this second shloka of chapter 13. Shankara, writing his commentary on it, has an imagined opponent. An imagined opponent asks a question, Purva Pakshi, and then the Siddhanti answers it. Siddhanti is the champion of the true school. Purva Pakshi is an imagined opponent who typically represents various other schools of thought. So Purva Pakshi asks the Siddhanti, Kasya avidya? Who has this ignorance? In English, we may put it in this way too. To whom does avidya belong? Like you see a pair of shoes and say, whose shoes are these? Someone owns them. The car is parked. Whose is this car? It is blocking the way. The owner, please come and take this car away. Like that, whose is this ignorance? Now, Adi Shankara, playing the role of Siddhanti, could jolly well say, oh, it belongs to the mind. You don't have ignorance. Your mind has ignorance. No. The moment you say your mind has ignorance, that mind as though gets a certain independence, certain status, as though the mind exists other than Brahma. The position is there is nothing other than Brahma. To propose anything other than Brahma would be Advaita Hani. It would be a damage to the very basic position. Brahma alone is. Neha nanasti kinchana. Therefore, what is the answer that Siddhanti gives? The Siddhanti says, Yasya drishyate tasya avidya. You ask to whom does ignorance belong? This ignorance belongs to whoever is asking this question, whoever is presently perceiving plurality. In a quick and passing reference to the sage of Arunachala, Sri Ramana Maharshi of the last century, I should say, when people asked any advanced question to Maharshi Ramana, he said, very nice, hold on, you have asked a doubt. Before we get into the doubt and its answers, tell me first, who has the doubt? And he summarized that approach, doubt the doubter. The doubter has to be doubted, means the credentials of the doubter are brought to question. So here too, Adi Shankara brings the very entity that is asking to question, into question. So, one who is perceiving. Now, this has tremendous philosophical significance. The entity that is wondering who has avidya, does he stand other than avidya? Who was that? Some great scientist said, right? Give me a place to stand and give me a pole long enough and give me a fulcrum, I will lift the earth. Proposition is good, but no one can stand like that, no one can get a pole like that, no one gets a fulcrum so that one can do that levering exercise. So, is there someone who then says, here is avidya, which is avidya like some coronavirus? The analogy would not hold good. Coronavirus has a status of its own in relation to you and me, who take ourselves to be these personalities with a body, mind, and so on. But avidya doesn't have a status, an existence separately. Here I now introduce an important concept in Advaita Vedanta, and that employs two expressions. One is the frame of reference of erroneous perception. The perception itself is erroneous, but it is a frame of reference and millions of things happen in that frame of reference. So frame of reference is best called in Sanskrit Bhumi. Bhumi is not earth here. Bhumi is the frame of reference. The frame of reference of error is avidya bhumi. And then there is the frame of reference of right seeing, samyak darshana. We call it vidya bhumi. In vidya bhumi, never does anything happen. In fact, what is more, in vidya bhumi, there is no space, there is no time. It is in avidya bhumi, within the frame of reference of error, that space is an appearance. Time is an appearance. The three states of experience, the three states of being, avastatraya, jagrat, swapna, sushupti, are appearances in the avidya bhumi, in the frame of reference, which is erroneous perception. This avidya, which is the same as adhyasa, is the breeding ground for millions of things. Plurality and everything that happens in a cosmic context or in an individual context, including spiritual phenomena such as somebody was bound and she got enlightened at such and such age, and then she went around till still her body dropped, she did such and such service. We have biographies of enlightened people also, but those who have the clearest vision smile at it, if not laugh at it. They, they say there is no one who was ever bound, therefore there is no question of someone getting enlightened. So avidya doesn't really exist at all. Therefore, the moment we ask who has avidya, we must also ask who has this question, and we must question the credentials of the questioner himself. Now, where is the basis for this? It is said in the Chandogya that in deep sleep, one is with pure self only. Sata sampannaha bhavati. And there is no time, no space there. There is the pure self alone, Sat alone. Waking and dream are two ways in which the same Brahma appears. And in our naivety, in our immaturity, we think of the waking entity, the waking self. If any of us thinks of oneself, I am John, I am Mary, there is an idea, I am this, I am that, then one is so glued to it, one is so identified with it, one has given as though a very special place to that Jagrat Ahankara, that one imagines that this Jagrat Ahankara goes to dream and after some time goes to deep sleep and then after some time comes back to dream or waking. Oh, so you have given such special status, unquestionable status, something like very special diplomatic immunity to this waking self. So the waking self has been wrongly imagined as being of unquestionable validity. Question it, then you will find that this going from waking to dream is not a valid position. To say someone goes from waking state to dream state and after some time comes back, etc., it requires that the axis of time be the same. If the axis of time is the same, then from T1 to T2, someone is in waking state. T2 to T3 time points, someone is in dream. And then T3 to T4, someone is in deep sleep, and so on would be valid. But time is part of the waking domain. Time is a part of the illusion of waking state. And the time of waking ends when waking ends. Space of waking state ends when waking state ends. In dream, the space and time that apply in dream have no relation to the space and time, desha kala, of waking state. And in deep sleep, there is no space, no time at all. One needs to look at the whole scenario from a different perspective, which essentially is refusing to give the waker, the waking ego, some kind of special status. No, The waking ego has no business to make comments and come to some conclusions about dream and deep sleep. Advaita Vedanta lifts us to that kind of height where one is really made very introspective, very quiet. One just silently looks at things and one reflects on the Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi. I am that. I have no business to imagine. I am somebody who is now in waking state. I will go to dream state, and so there is no one to go, no one to come. You are, and in you, these things appear. In fact, you yourself appear. If you take any metaphor too seriously, like the cinema screen on which pictures appear, now the metaphor has the limitation. The cinema screen is, it exists on its own, and the projector, the pictures, etc. exist on their own. If this screen is folded up, the picture can be projected on another screen. All these are limitations of the metaphor. In the truth proper, the screen, the light, the pictures, the projector, those who see that which is seen, all of them are one with no dividing line. Therefore, metaphors are helpful, but at the right time they have to be dropped, they have to be left lock, stock, and barrel. We have to be ruthless about those metaphors. Don't be emotionally attached to them. Then you will leave truth behind and embrace the metaphor. It's better to let go of the metaphor and embrace the truth. You are the truth. Therefore, who has avidya is really a wrong question. Or if you insist, the entity that is the jiva who is having this doubt is part of avidya, is internal, antargata. Just as when you are, again I'm coming into an example, illustration, metaphor, if you are watching a video game with your son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter, yeah, a hero is in danger over there, and then wow, the hero really comes out of all the problems and is victorious. Now the hero and the villain and others are internal to the frame of reference of the video game. They are not independent. After you switch off the video machine, the computer or whatever, and you go for dinner, you don't say, well, I don't know how that hero is. After all that, what he is doing now. There is no hero other than the frame of reference of that video play. Likewise, there is this play of names and forms on the substrate adhisthana of Brahma, this whole play and the space and time in that play, within that play, and the individual who apparently was bound and gets liberated in between, does spiritual practices and all that is within the avidya bhumi. There is no one who has avidya. For anyone you could talk of, any person or any equipment or organ or instrument, mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, indriya, pancha pranas and 1,000 things. All of them are internal. They are the characters within the video game. And the whole video game loses its validity, astitva. It has no status quo. It has no real credentials. Therefore, finally, let me say and invite questions at this time. Let me say, Summa iru, Maharshi Ramana said in Tamil, be still and know you are God. I believe that is said in some Old Testament or somewhere. And Maharshi Ramana used to refer to it. And later on, some saints of India also have said that. I think Saint Arunagiri Nathar in Tamil Nadu, in one of his poems, has used that expression, Summa iru, be still, chup raho. So that is not a suppression of your thinking, but out of mature insights, you find that this whole business of modeling, I am bound, I become pure-minded, then I get enlightened. This whole model has to be just dumped into the Pacific Ocean or the Arabian Sea, wherever you like. Throw the model away. Summa iru, be still and realize. So that is the quantum leap. That is the realization. Thank you. I highly appreciate Advaita Academy's Festival of Advaita, Festival of Shankara. This is a wonderful thing, and I wish all the organizers and the participants the very best. Om
Thank you,
Namo
Swami.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
I
Bhagavate.
welcome questions.
Thank you for a very enlightening speech, saying that if there is no binding, if there is no avidya, and so who is actually the one who is asking the question? That's a very enlightened way of thinking about it. And as you rightly say, if there is no binding, where is enlightenment at the same time? There is one question from Aditya Shastri which says, please shed some light on self-realization question, who am I? And how do we realize and get answers practically? Maybe you can even bring in your focus on Ramana Maharshi as well, maybe, if it
Right.
were.
Right. Classical Vedanta, as presented by Adi Shankara, approaches this whole matter of realization, of gaining right perception, carrying two words together, Tat and Tvam. Tat is God, Tvam is every one of us. And Advaita says, God and man are one. In fact, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara are all one. So, while classical Vedanta takes both an examination or inquiry into the concept of God and inquiry into concept of the individual self, both are taken on two tracks, and their identity, their oneness is shown. Ramana's self-inquiry says, with due respect to that classical approach, Ramana says, all right, do one thing, just inquire into who you are. That is an inquiry into Tvam. In the Tattvamasi, Tvam stands for every one of us. So, Tvam Pada Pradhana is self-inquiry. Now, this inquiry is to go to the very root cause, so to say, of this whole error and things that have come out of error. Avidya and avidya kalpita vishayaha. Lots of things have come up. Because in any field, when you make a fundamental error, a lot of other errors will follow. Like corollaries follow theorems, that happens. So self-realization is nothing but busting of this error. Fundamental error is removed, there is self-realization in a manner of saying. In reality, no one was bound, therefore there is no realization as such. But in a manner of saying, like in the video game, the hero was in deep trouble, and then, finally he wins, and so on. Let me share a joke. Someone went to a movie 20 times. They asked, why are you going again and again? He says, at the end of 1 hour, the hero makes a mistake by making a wrong promise. I'm going again, hoping that this time he won't make that promise. So, within the movie, it goes on repeating. Anyway, second question.
There is not yet another question. Something is coming up. But while that is being read, one thing which I thought was, so does Ramana Maharshi does not follow Shastra Pramana, Veda Pramana? Does he say self-inquiry without requiring Shastra Pramana, you can actually discover yourself? Is that true?
No, actually, Ramana Maharshi fully honors and respects the Vedanta tradition.
Okay.
He is very much in tune with Adi Shankara. In fact, it is amazing how, though he had not studied all the Bhashyas, all his answers are
Mhm.
so much in alignment with the profound insights of Shankara in his Bhashyas. But now I understand your question. Maharshi discouraged people from getting lost in just bookish study.
Okay.
That is the whole point. He therefore is misunderstood to have told people not to study. No, not that way. But of course, he did say, don't get too verbose and don't get lost in grammar and in some other etymology and memorizing things, almost like Shankara's, nahi nahi rakshati
Mohammed Quran.
dukram karani.
Right.
Otherwise, let me end my answer with the reference in Saddarshanam, which is
Yeah.
the Sanskrit rendering of Ulladu Napatu, 40 verses on reality by Ramana Maharshi. He actually pays a glowing tribute to the Vedas. Ahasputam tattvamasiti vedaha tatapya samprapya paratmanishtam bhuyo vicharo mati durbalatvam tatsarvada swatmataya hi bhati. There is a shloka. The first line says, the Vedas have clearly said tattvamasi. And yet, why are you wobbling? Why are you oscillating? So he pays great tributes to the Vedas.
Here is another, not just a question, it's a series of questions, but uh, as for quantum mechanics, quantum physics, the avidya or karma data is in our brain, or is it in our DNA? And if it is in our DNA, then the brain is only doing processing of stored data in DNA. Or is there some other logic behind it? So that is the question by Aditya Sastry again.
Oh, I am sorry. Actually, I don't know this connection between quantum physics and brain and DNA, etc. First time I am hearing this connection between biology and physics. So forgive me. I'll try to read up on this. Uh, in fact, yesterday I was taking a look at Dana Johar, who wrote that
Right,
famous book on spiritual intelligence.
right.
She has later on written something on the quantum self or
Quantum
something.
intelligence, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Dina Johar. Yeah,
quantum. So I suspected that, hey, these guys are nowadays connecting quantum physics to even forms of intelligence and human behavior and so on. I
yeah.
use, even in today's talk, used quantum leap. I use
Mhm.
it in a very general sense of a leap
Right.
from space-time to a domain of no space and time, a drastically different, frame of reference. So this question I am not qualified to answer at this moment.
Thank you. Um, at this moment, we do not have any specific questions that came from the audience, Swamiji.
Hmm.
And again, it is my
I'm
good
coming
fortune
again
to.
on, I think, Wednesday evening in California and Thursday morning in India.
That's right. So we
And
end
that's
around 7 o'clock, which is about time anyway.
yes,
And
yes,
the topic that you have chosen and the way in which you elaborated and clarified what it is not the question, but who it is actually something that we need to inquire into, is
yes,
a very powerful reframing and examining myself is something that I learned a lot, Swamiji, tonight.
thank you.
And thank you very much for that. And it's a pleasure to see you in video, at least, if not in
Yeah.
person. And you have a wonderful day. And hopefully, I mean, I think we are getting you back on another day. And I'm looking forward to hearing you
Yes,
more when you
yes.
come back. Thank you.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste. So thank you. So we will end tonight, and tomorrow morning we are having, and actually tomorrow morning for California, I should say, but that is something which we say it differently. It's a day 6, session 2, May 3rd evening in India. but it will be May 3rd morning in California. We have 2 talks. Spiritual sadhana as per Adi Sankaracharya by Professor Penna Madhusudan. And then we will have Introduction to Kena Upanishad by Swami Iswarananda of Chinmaya Mission. These are 2 talks that are scheduled. Depending on where you are, it is either evening or morning. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please pass the word around to other people. We are really now broadcasting, as of today, we are broadcasting on YouTube, on Facebook, in addition to Zoom meetings, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you and good night.